Well, thank you very much for coming to our second webinar. Today we're going to be talking about why businesses should be using LinkedIn. There are a lot of different reasons, of course, as we take you through this webinar, and we'll be exploring things like business company pages, personal profiles, and the all-important buzzword that's hanging around LinkedIn at the moment is personal branding. So we're going to just take you through this and see where we end up. So we've just got a few bullet points here. April and I are going to take you through, as you can see, very quickly. April, would you like to start us off?
Yep, of course. So the first one that we've got is networking. So, LinkedIn is a part of the social media brand of what you can, interact with people. I know that people find LinkedIn is the professional one out of all of the social medias that you have available to you. So there is the opportunity to network with people who are in your industry and people who even work with you. So it's a very good place to share business news and to comment on people in the industry who offer something that might be of value to what you kind of isn't in line with what you offer as a business. And it's also a good way to network with potential customers. So that would lead into the generating leading sales, which we'll cover in a minute. And it's also a good way to find and hire people, again, which we'll cover in a moment. But it's just it's good for online networking. And just kind of seeing who's in your industry, what people are up to, and it's basically just a really good social media for businesses.
It's funny, isn't it, how it's categorized under social media, and we get a lot of people who comment quite regularly, oh, it's not Facebook. But this is where we come to talk about personal branding. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways of going about what you should and shouldn't post, and I think we could probably touch on that a little bit more as we go through as well. Is making sure that if you are setting up a business page, is to incorporate your branding and make sure that, well, for a start, it's not going to offend anyone, because it's too easy nowadays with a lot of people online, and LinkedIn being classed as social media, whereas actually, is it just a platform for, just networking really, and generating business and leads?
I think that it has all the abilities of all the other social media platforms, in the sense that you separate personal branding and business branding, just like you have like on Facebook and Instagram business, the personal pages. And it's a bit more accepted on LinkedIn to kind of just like drop into people's I know people use like Instagram people and like Facebook and message strangers in a sense, but LinkedIn kind of has it's more acceptable on LinkedIn to kind of talk to people about business opportunities and what you have to offer, and to kind of be interested in connecting on LinkedIn. It kind of gives you more validity as well if you have a professional page, and you're offering something that isn't just general chat or something that you would do on other social media profiles. So I think it's also a good way to kind of encourage followers. If it tends to be much like other social media platforms, if you have a lot amount of followers and a lot amount of connections, you are seen as kind of more popular on LinkedIn. But yeah, people tend to get a bit confused with what's acceptable on LinkedIn versus other social profiles, because you are kind of sharing it to a broader audience that aren't necessarily just your friends and family.
I think you raise an interesting point, and I think, LinkedIn in itself is quite a say, varied platform, in the fact that you can have all your friends, but you can also use it for business. And I think it's drawing on that point where, certain profiles might be more popular than other people. I know that's come under fire recently, but we'll talk more in depth about that. And you wouldn't go on Facebook and, pretend to be best mates with, the person you're trying to do business with. Whereas LinkedIn, I think, the actual brand of LinkedIn encourages that. And, you get to know strangers, you get to know them in a bit more depth about what they do, their job, and the company they work for.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, I think it's just it's definitely just more accepting on LinkedIn to be able to talk to people you don't necessarily know, and want to have a business connection with, rather than friendship, in a sense. Because I've seen on some people's LinkedIn where people have actually tried to use LinkedIn as a dating site. I've seen that on a few occasions, and it's totally inappropriate for LinkedIn, but it's a bit more acceptable-ish on stuff like Instagram and Facebook. So I think people just need to understand that it is social media, but use it for professional, and use it as in, because people who want to work with you in the future will be looking through your LinkedIn profile and getting to know you that way. So yeah, you should separate, kind of like, you can put personal stuff on there, but not too personal, and stuff that kind of reflects on like how you manage your, business versus personal life, rather than just talking about what you do on the weekend and stuff like that.
I think you draw on another interesting point where, these potential people are using this platform as a dating platform, which is not appropriate. And I think, people can actually see you and where you work. So why even think about it in the first place?
Yeah.
So I think it's, there is a fine line between obviously company and personal branding, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute.
Yeah. Should we talk about generating leads and sales?
Yes, we can do, yeah.
So LinkedIn, because it is the opportunity to reach out to potential customers, and you also have a lot more search ability on LinkedIn, because people do put stuff like what their company is interested in, what role they have and the position they have in the company, and are happy to share like work updates, and kind of ask for advice on particular subjects to do with work. You do have the opportunity to connect with people, reach out, and kind of offer how you could solve their issues on LinkedIn. So it puts you in direct contact with people who you could potentially work with in the future. And people do put their work email as well on there, so you do have the opportunity to kind of connect that way. You can also send direct messages to people that you are connected with. And you can use Sales Navigator if you have that kind of level of permissions on your LinkedIn to kind of engage with people and do market research for potential audiences that way as well.
I think LinkedIn is great because it's accessible to everybody. Obviously, there's pros and cons to the LinkedIn Premium, and obviously pros and cons to Sales Navigator. And there are obviously other platforms out there that can do the job, but LinkedIn are very harsh with obviously utilizing some of those platforms because they consider them bots or whatever the case may be, and it might just flag up the like the terms and conditions, and yeah, you'll be thrown into LinkedIn jail.
Yeah, they are fussy on spam. Like, you can't send a certain amount of invites or a certain amount of messages after, because you will get locked out of your account for a few days if you kind of get a bit too spammy. So yeah, you'd have to be careful on using it like a lot in a certain amount of time. Like, you have to be very strategic on how much connections you want to do and how much you can follow people up.
I think LinkedIn is definitely a strategy to consider, and I think it's definitely one of those things where you have to put a lot more thought in it than just posting. If you want to start generating sales and leads, you need to have that strategy there. And I think drawing on your point, April, is having that, just to be careful that you don't trigger LinkedIn. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
It humanizes you, I find, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I'd say more so than other social media platforms as well. But that's just my personal opinion.
Depends how fake you want to be on Instagram and stuff. my
Yeah.
Instagram looks like I have a way better life than I do. So
Yeah. Right. I'll just scroll back and make sure we covered everything. Oh yeah. So the actual original reason for this platform is to recruit talent and hire people. Obviously, it's just an element of the platform nowadays anyway. And it is very good. You know, you can advertise for free or like boost your job advert as you would probably on other platforms as well. So um and within a company as well, like you can get employees to share that if you're recruiting talent. And I know a lot of recruiters use LinkedIn and obviously use the benefit of Sales Navigator to search through for talent as well.
yeah, another good thing that with LinkedIn is you can actually say when you've got a job that LinkedIn helped you get that, and it will appear on your profile. So I think it's another. It shows that you do recruit through LinkedIn, and then it also helps promote LinkedIn as a recruitment platform as well.
We're going to move on a little bit with what we are going to be talking about in terms of optimizing your LinkedIn, whether that might be your business page or your personal page. So we've just got a few bullet points here, just clarifying a few things in terms of your profiles. So obviously the one main thing is if obviously you have a company page is to make sure your brand is up together and consistent with other platforms as well. So it is important to make sure you have a clear image in your profile and header. And then obviously you want to make sure that you've got some content there that is will allow people to interact with, whether that might be educational, inspirational, or you know, just memes. The other thing as well, we'll come on to this a little bit in a bit more detail, is bullet points around like an ideal strategy to kind of get started. Because obviously everybody wants more followers and obviously everybody wants to get their engagement levels through the roof. Whether that might be a case of you're a B2B or B2C business. You may not always sell via LinkedIn, but obviously particularly if you're B2C, but if you're B2B, you might find that actually it generates quite a bit of website traffic.
Yeah, definitely in terms of B2B, because obviously you're connecting with other business rather than customers. It does give you that added opportunity. And in terms of setting up profiles for LinkedIn, just to go back a bit, suggestion is to constantly update what you do and make sure that everything is filled in. It's just as simple as that. There's so many options on LinkedIn, and you can actually edit, enable creator mode so that you can pin particular posts to the top of your account. There's other options as well in terms of how creative you want to get with uploading. You could have video profile instead. You can have profile videos instead of profile pictures. You can even have, if you have a name that might be particularly difficult to pronounce, there are options for that as a to have that on your profile. You can also include what you talk about on your LinkedIn so that people can obviously find you through search as well. So if you have, I'll talk about digital marketing, and then someone searches digital marketing on LinkedIn, then your profile would appear. And it also gives people a bit of an overview of what you cover before they even start looking into your profile in more detail and going into, you know, what the kind of stuff that you offer. It's also good to have consistent branding. Perhaps if you're going to do a particular campaign that you offer, then you can have a header on your LinkedIn that goes through, that is a part of a marketing campaign. It might not necessarily be a picture of anything. It could just be, you know, what your campaign is offering. It's another free tool to kind of show what you are working on as well. So kind of just utilize everything that's available to you. I know that some people try to put URLs in their description. You can't have URLs that are clickable, so be really careful with that. A lot of people try and put emojis in there as well to try and kind of make, it's attention seeking in the best way, to have emojis in your LinkedIn profile and on your LinkedIn posts. So just trying to get as creative as you can and keep it updated and fill everything in is basically the best way to optimize your LinkedIn page itself. And then you can go into expanding that through, joining groups and following hashtags and stuff like that.
I think you raised some really good points there. And just drawing back to obviously making sure everything is clear and concise. There is a lot you can do with your LinkedIn profile from your headline, which is a lot of the time what the first thing people read. Get those emojis in there to make it a bit more friendly and personal. And then you can always look at other people's for examples as well. So you can actually generate quite a few ideas. I mean, one of the best ways is obviously to follow people that are in a similar kind of job role or industry to you, and then obviously not copy, but kind of take inspiration from that, and then develop on that really. And then obviously you can have URLs, but they are just sometimes you might want to set it up through to Linktree, and then obviously Linktree can hold a number of links. So whether you want to go after your website or further social media or something else entirely, or some people might have just like a book now. In terms of like a discovery call, which I've seen quite a lot of. And then obviously you can have featured images, as April touched on. And then obviously you've got your content further down. And then the way I look at it is you treat it like a CV. You keep it up to date as much as possible. And then people can actively, recruiters as well, they can actively kind of look you up, and businesses and business owners can decide whether they want to work with you as well. So, it all sets a good premise around what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it definitely use it as a CV, which does go back to the fact that it is used as hiring. I know a lot of people get headhunted on LinkedIn as well, so that's probably why. If your CV LinkedIn is so good, you're going to get headhunted.
Yeah, absolutely. But talking more in terms of business company pages, there is also a lot you can do there. So in the About Us section, there will be like opportunities for you to direct to the website or have buttons at the top of the page. So obviously, if you're setting up your first business company profile, and it actually walk you through this step-by-step process. And then obviously you can make tweaks and modifications over time, add staff, add, all the information that you need to be able to give, whoever it might be, as much information as possible about you. Yeah.
So we go into the additional ways on how you can use LinkedIn to the best of your ability. So this will be stuff like what the bullet points say, the join groups. There are options to join or create relevant groups that you can talk with people in your sector and even talk to potential clients. So it's a good way to share information and really share your expertise as well, to kind of show that you're a leader in the market. So it's a really good place to show your leadership sort of leadership articles, thought leadership pieces is a really good place for that. It's a good place to get research on what other people in the industry are doing and what potential customers are looking for. So it's a good place to like run polls as an example. And it just kind of creates a community for LinkedIn that is focusing around what you do and what other people in your sector are doing. You can also follow particular hashtags. So this will come up on your dashboard when you're scrolling through it. It will say something like, because it came up with that hashtag that you have saved. So you can save hashtags to follow, and then they will appear on your feed. You might not necessarily be following the person who's posted that, but because you followed that hashtag, it will appear. So it's a good way to interact with people that you might not know, but are actually posting about stuff that's relevant to you. And even when you search for hashtags on LinkedIn, it will show up the number of people that kind of use that hashtag. So it's good for hashtag research. So if you wanted to kind of engage with a hashtag that's got hundreds of thousands of people talking about it regularly, it'll be good to use. But again, there is the risk that there's a lot of traffic relating to that hashtag, so you might get lost in the mix. And then it's a good way to kind of create hashtags that are unique just for you. So business specific, because you know that not anyone's using that, then it's a good place to kind of understand how hashtags perform on LinkedIn and which ones would be best suited to what you offer. And if there's one that kind of has a mid-range, then you know that it could be relevant to a particular issue or problem that a customer has, or a location. So for example, Digital Marketing UK, you know that people using that hashtag are going to be kind of UK based. So it really depends on what you want to follow, and even use it to know what you want to post about. Jenny, did you want to talk about attending LinkedIn events? We have touched briefly upon that on the last webinar, but in case anyone missed it.
Yeah, I mean, you've raised some good points there again as well. Just to clarify that these bullet points do apply to your personal page. Obviously, when you create a LinkedIn event, you'll be using the company profile. I mean, you can set up LinkedIn events through your personal page if you're doing business as just you, and you don't want to use a company page, that's also fine. So just quickly then, LinkedIn events could obviously come in two different streams. Obviously, this kind of webinar kind of styled video chat, and then also you've got the audio version as well. So it really depends what kind of thing you're looking at aiming to achieve. And they're really easy and quick and simple to set up. Sometimes you might have to use a third-party streaming, depending on obviously the number of followers you have, or whether you've got LinkedIn Premium and things like that. So it's just worth researching more into that as well. Carrying on, by using LinkedIn, I find, well, me personally, I find that you can stay up to date with trends really, really easily. People tend to be quite reactive in terms of, responding to news and articles and things that have just come out. So it's really worthwhile using those groups and hashtags to find creators that are, relatable to what you're looking at. And then as we move on, it's news and articles. You can actually create these as a company page or a personal profile, so it's entirely up to you what you'd like to do. And obviously, across all of these, you might make your content for the newsletters and articles, but you could make it into short form content and break it down further. And that hashtag you might have used in your newsletter and article, you might say to yourself, okay, well, I might change that into my personal hashtag and try and get people following that hashtag in a group. And it will just link everything back together quite nicely. And also, you might start building a community through that as well.
Yeah, a good thing with the newsletters as well, is that you can actually get people to subscribe. So they will subscribe to your if it's a reoccurring newsletter. So it will be, you can choose to post weekly or monthly or bi-weekly. And then whoever is subscribed will actually get a notification come through on their LinkedIn to say that you've updated a post. So we do suggest that you try and get people to subscribe, but people kind of be invited who are your followers anyway to subscribe as soon as the newsletter's set up.
I mean, it's a great way of engaging your audience, and also community if you have one, or you want to start building community. Obviously, there's different ways and routes about it. It all depends on what strategy you have in place as well. And they get that notification. Also, if you have a lot of followers, they might tap to follow you, and if they hit a little icon which is in the shape of a bell, they'll get notified of whenever you post as well. So that's always a good thing to encourage.
Yeah, definitely.
So just a quick table here, drawing on points that we've already probably discussed with you as well. Just touching on the differences between company and personal profiles. There's really not a lot in it, but obviously personal branding has been bounced around quite a bit. And we're going to talk about that just shortly. So in the top column, we've got obviously company. We talked briefly earlier about having your brand being quite consistent across all of your profiles so that people can find you. I wouldn't recommend using emojis in company names just because sometimes people can't always find you for whatever reason. They might be outside the character limit as well, so just be aware of that. And obviously, personal is personal branding. So, yep. April, would you like to carry on?
Yeah, so in terms of company as well, so the messages are a form of content and read by everybody. So everybody who is following your company or might be interested in following your company are able to read messages that should be from a business perspective. So they will be messages from the business. They can be slightly personal, or like humanized. So you come across as having a particular company tone of voice, but it's more of a company tone of voice rather than your individual. So you have to be we like to say you have to be more professional on the LinkedIn company pages than you have the opportunity to do on personal, because on personal you can create personal messages to your network. So this is people that you actively engage with, and you can show your human side. It's from you rather from the company. Even if your job in the company is to post on LinkedIn, what you post on your personal, you can talk about what you've actually been doing at work. You can even talk about that you post on the professional company page. But yeah, you have the opportunity to be more human and more you on your personal. We find that as well.
Sorry, just to interject. I think as well with personal as well, it's very much what you're doing and the work you're doing, and I think it comes across better. And you might find that some companies are too large to narrow down one individual employee to talk about. So yeah, it's obviously better if, well, for everyone really, that personal branding is obviously personal to the person who is constructing the message. They can shout about their achievements, and also they can granulate into what they're talking about in terms of whatever the message might be, and like their successes and achievements, also their failures as well, because yeah, you're coming across and saying, well, hold up, I made a mistake, and people can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to mistakes as well, they're there for you to learn from and for other people to learn from. So you do have the opportunity to kind of own up to what you do and put more personal stuff on that, because companies don't necessarily want to admit that they've done anything wrong. So yeah, you do have that opportunity on the personal side as well.
Yeah, so I was also going to mention as well, but it was in the next column as I started to chat there. Contents can sometimes also be cliche and on trend for companies. So they might just be following the same format as everybody else. And like I said just a second ago about, if a company is large, they're not exactly going to want to hone in on one individual. I mean, sometimes they might because, it could be a campaign or a strategy that they want to start to implement in terms of talking about, if they're a large company, they might say, right, okay, let's have John from the HR department talk about, what it's like to work for us, and other little videos and pieces of content like that. Just make it a little bit more human on the company side. Whereas with the personal side, you can actually carry on your personal branding whether you are with that company or not. So you could say, right, okay, I'm working for X company, but now I'd like to go freelance. You've already built that network to be able to support you. So, you've developed a relevant network, a network that's already used to seeing your content and people that actually enjoy it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then obviously, moving on to the last point is marketing updates are tailored to everyone. That kind of fits with the content company cliche. So they're just targeting the wider audience rather than a niche aspect. So, for example, Vodafone might target everybody about the latest 5G, but they're not saying, iPhone users, look, 5G, that kind of uh, analogy, like example. But yeah. And then obviously personal, you can get a little bit more niche, a little bit more refined in your audience. You can start a newsletter around just email marketing if you wanted. You can host events just about LinkedIn if you wanted. And then obviously write articles and posts and things and subjects that may be separate to your company as well. So they don't necessarily have to align with, you know, um, you might be passionate. For me, I'm passionate about horses, so I could say, right, okay, how would an equestrian business or market themselves or position themselves? Because obviously within the equestrian industry, it's quite broad, but also you can get quite niche quite quickly. So it's obviously thinking about that positioning by using your personal brand.
And I think that when it comes to personal as well, if you're going to connect with people who potentially would end up using your company, you've built that relationship from the start. You're that kind of person's point of contact, and people do work with people. They don't work with the company. They won't work with every person in the company. They would work with just a few people. So yeah, if you kind of are that point of contact at the beginning, then they can build trust with you and as a result, the company. And it kind of just builds that relationship and that kind of connection with your client. And if you kind of build that sense of friendship and stuff, it's a lot easier to communicate and be open and clear with people in the future. So there is a good difference between company and personal, but I think you can both use both for a sense of connection and marketing. It just will affect kind of the how specific you can get and how personal you can get, and who exactly you're talking to.
I think a lot of what we're seeing as well is companies are very much marketing to a wider audience, whereas and then obviously we know for a fact that personal profiles tend to do well because, well, number one, it's more relatable, and number two, it's not, they're not immediately trying to sell you something, whereas a company might. So it's just obviously bearing that in mind as to what you want to choose to set up when you're starting out a business, or whether you might say, actually, my LinkedIn engagement is down and I really want to change my strategy, but how do I go about doing that? You might consider your personal profile as the way to go forward, and you might start developing your brand because of that as well. So we just got other thoughts here. We're going to touch upon including LinkedIn Ads, Sales Navigator, LinkedIn Premium, and free ranking on Google. So obviously, when you come to set up your business page, you can have the option to use LinkedIn ads, which are, in our opinion, quite expensive. So you'd probably be better off using paid ads for your website as an alternative in terms of cost-effective marketing strategies. And then obviously we've got Sales Navigator, which we talked about earlier. Just interject, April, if you want to add, contribute to anything. And then we've got LinkedIn Premium as well. Obviously, we discussed that LinkedIn Premium was LinkedIn was accessible to everybody, but Premium does have advantages over using just the free. The only one I know of is you are allowed to see who's actually looked at your profile into more detail. And then
you can refine. Sorry. You can also refine searches. So it does give you, if you're going to look for a particular person in a particular sector, it gives you more than a few pages of results. Like if you're free, it will restrict the information that's available to you. And you can also send messages to people that you're not connected with if you have Premium.
Yeah, and then the last point is actually you will appear on Google via your company page appearing or your name appearing if you get searched on Google as well. So in actual fact, it benefits that way. And I know a lot of companies do actually appear at the top of search via their company name on LinkedIn rather than their actual website. So yeah, it's just something to consider as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And there we are. That concludes our webinar. I know we've run over a little bit, but hopefully that defines the differences and why businesses should be using LinkedIn.